What we're talking about here is, do you want to win a championship, or do you want to have this great, awesome, championship contending team that might just fall a little bit short year in and year out, depending on how things break? You could win a championship with the team you have now. They're certainly viewed as the favorites. But if you did something like Brown and Smart for Durant, and then you still had Brogdon, you still had Rob, you still had Grant, whoever else, I think you're prohibitive favorites by a significant amount with Tatum and Durant as your 1-2. If Durant's playing at his level, there's concerns there and injuries and everything else that could happen. But if all is equal and
Yep.
everything goes perfectly either way, let's say you have a 55% chance or so of winning a title now, you might have like a 65. And is that
I,
worth it?
I don't. Here's the thing. There's multiple things to consider, and again, we're now debating the basketball merits of this versus everything else. We've been over this before. I truly believe having a young core, and having a 25-year-old who might be the 25th or 24th or 23rd best player in the NBA is better than having somebody who's the fourth or fifth best player in the NBA who's turning 34, had a major injury 2 years ago, is generally speaking kind of a grumbly guy that you don't necessarily want to root for to begin with. And, the window is extremely small with a player of that age. So everything has to go, and just look what's happened. Look at these windows. Look how quickly the Nets window closed because of an injury, because of weirdness from one situation. You're talking one injury to one key player knocks you back to the middle of the pack, and that 65% goes to 30% or 20%, and it's over. Plus 65% is insanely high. So I think it's a marginal upgrade overall, especially if you are throwing in other core rotational pieces.
Yeah,
When you're
that's great
talking
good stuff.
about Jaylen being the only major thing of value you're going to lose other than potentially draft picks, the conversation is different, because now you're weighing, well, what if Durant's really good for 3 years? That probably outstrips Jaylen's long-term value, even if he did resign. Plus, you remove the uncertainty of whether or not he'll sign because Durant is locked up for 4. That's why the Brown, whether you love the deal or not, that's why the Brown White single pick deal makes sense, for those reasons.
Yeah, and
You
if you're Boston, you can sit on that because what else is going to happen on the
but
Durant front? I think
that's
this
what's
whole
most interesting to me, right,
yeah.
Bobby? And that's what gets to me is what's most interesting, and this recent report from Brian Windhorst, and I love this ESPN on ESPN crime between Windhorst and Woj going back and forth, because Windhorst has just been pouring cold water on all of these transactional reports that people are throwing out there. But I mean, Windhorst just straight out said this is a super old story, so there's really not much to this. So this really sounds to me like initial tire kicking and not anything that's gone any further. And if that's the case, you're right. The Celtics can absolutely hold and see what falls. It is interesting to me, Bobby, as we continue to talk about insane things like 5 picks and all of this stuff. Two things happen. One, the market was completely reset because of that stupid friggin' Minnesota trade, and everybody knows it, and
Danny.
everybody's like, if that's what it takes to just get to the table, I'm out. Because if that's the new market, if that's the new normal for trading for stars plus players I like, forget about it. I'm out. I'm not doing that. I'm not starting at 5 and 6 picks just to get a slight upgrade in talent. I'm out. So it's not surprising that a lot of teams aren't in there, but you have to start thinking, you know, what what's going on in other teams' minds right now. If Kevin Durant truly is one of the great players of all time and certainly of this generation, which he is, why aren't people falling over themselves for him? A deal like this, if it was a player of this caliber, you would think it would be a
Well, a
deal,
big
then a better
part's the
deal, then a
Simmons
better deal,
restriction,
then a
right?
better deal. No,
A
but I'm
big
saying
part's the Simmons restriction.
the Simmons restriction is one thing, but the fact that nobody is falling over themselves, you got a bunch of Celtics. If the Celtics offer is real, it seems like you have a lot of take it or leave it offers with teams like this is about as much as I do. And honestly, I'm pretty lukewarm on it to begin with. So take it or leave it. Teams are not falling over themselves to make this happen, which is really interesting.
It is, because I think there's worry about the other stuff, and I'm worried about that here too in terms of the organizational control you might be ceding to Durant, what happened in Brooklyn, his his decision to bomb out of a 4-year deal on top of that all. I get why people don't love any of that, and if you're a team that's in a good position right now, like Boston, like Toronto, who's been talked about as this fringe team that might get involved in something like this, you don't want to give up everything. Plus, if you give up everything, you might not be in the position to win a championship with Durant just because you're too thin. We've seen the last couple of years here, these teams with a little bit more depth, a little bit more versatility. They're better shots than the Lakers, who are relying on 1-2 players, or the Nets, certainly, who didn't take good advantage of their role guys, just relying on the stars. So I get why there's cold water just because of the demand. I mean, what was the Minnesota report that they were asking for Towns and Ben Edwards and all those.
Towns and Edwards, you got
It's
to be
silly
kidding
stuff.
me. Yeah, it's silly
Yeah.
stuff.
So like, no one's even thinking Toronto's going to give up Barnes, Van Fleet, Trent. It's a whole team. So if you're the Celtics and the Nets' response is Brown, Smart, Rob, and picks is, they said a rotation player. I'm sure they'd prefer Rob of all those rotation players.
Rotation
You're
player
not
could
doing that
also
if you're the Celtics either.
rotation player could also mean Grant. Our minds don't need to immediately jump to
Yeah.
someone like Rob. It could mean something else.
I love Brown. Again, he's one of my favorite players on this team. I think his growth curve could still go even higher here. I think this team still has potential if they stand pat here. But if Kevin Durant, the best or second best player in the league right now, becomes available, what are you going to do? Offer White, Grant, and Rob? Like, Brown is
You
the
don't.
starting point.
You don't. You don't. You don't. You either don't offer anything if you don't want to be associated with Durant, and whether if you don't think that he's a good fit for your team, or you're worried about him being a flight risk
So
or the
that's
age
what
or
do you
the age
think
or
this
whatever.
report? What do you think this report indicates? Were the Celtics actively engaging, really putting their foot into this, or did Brad just get kind of caught as like new GM saying? Sean Mark says, "Would you throw in Brown?" And Brad goes, "Yeah." Like they're not actually talking about a deal, but when they're throwing around names, he got Brad to say yes to Brown, and all of a sudden
Again,
they have them
you
up for this
never know
report.
what it is. As I said, from a business perspective, you're hedging bets a little bit with Brown, and as I said, you move on from White. Now that you've gotten Brogdon in here, you don't save money today, but you do a couple years down the road when the Jaylen extension would have kicked in and would have kind of skyrocketed you up to an even higher kind of luxury threshold. And you have 4 years, and you feel better about knowing that. You feel better about securing Tatum long term. There's a lot of things beyond basketball and basketball fit that come into play. So I do think it's possible that a trade involving Brown, White, and just a pick is something the Celtics would strongly consider, because it's not blowing up their core. It's
Well, would you do Brown's?
eliminating a redundancy. It's moving a little bit of money that might be, ill spent. And also there's the chance that you're getting, a person who's going to the second best player in the league and a top 15 player of all time to continue to play at a super high level for 3-4 years. And
Well, let
again,
me ask you two
make no
questions.
mistake. And again, I know there's people in the chat saying things like Jaylen Brown is better. Look, my concern with Durant is if the cliff comes. As currently as he played last year while healthy, and I know he didn't have a great playoff series against the Celtics, but the way he was playing last year, Jaylen Brown will never come within miles of that level on the court. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. It's not. But I do believe if Durant dips a little and Jaylen Brown continues even a marginal ascent, they start to get close enough where I don't know that the gains are worth it when you throw a ton of other things into the package. And that's my concern there. Straight up, they're on a different plane of existence. And I think we have to accept
They
that.
do look really good now as they stand. There's a
Yeah.
few
But
concerns
you
in the
like where
pickup.
they are, where they stand. You just went in here and all, you just got in here and you just made moves that made you a betting favorite to win the NBA finals. Like, you don't need it, but
But you're not
I
prohibitive
understand why
favorites.
you're not. But I understand why you're thinking about it. I understand why you're thinking about it.
Yeah, people have kicked around that notion that they're the favorites, and I'd say I don't know if they are, right? You can't. How can you hand them being favorites over the Warriors after the Warriors just beat them 3 straight to close out the series and effectively dominated that series? The Warriors are favorites. Warriors might be better after they got JaMychal Green and Dante DiVincenzo. You can probably go back and forth on that, which roster was better. Milwaukee looks enticing right now. I've seen them favorites in one location as well. So you're in the mix. You're right at the top with everybody else that's on that level. I just think if you do the right trade here, like let's say Brown, Smart, and 5 firsts, would you do that, John? If that was the deal?
What's that?
Brown, Smart, and 5 firsts with the 2 pick swaps?
I don't do it at all. I don't like the
Oh, so you
deal.
wouldn't even do this one in front of us, White,
I
Brown, and a
would. I
first.
understand the business of doing this deal. I'd rather not do it. And again, it's not because I think Jaylen is untouchable. I just don't want to do this deal.
So
I
what if the
don't want.
Nets say yes to 5 firsts, Brown, and Smart? You're saying no?
What's that?
Brown, Smart, and 5 firsts. You're saying no.
No. I don't
right.
want to do that. I hate the 5 first deals, first of all. To me, it's either or. You do 5 firsts, and the Celtics' problem is and has always been when it comes to these trades that they don't have their they don't have their hero. They don't have their on the cusp of being really good, but not great. Like hero's not Jaylen Brown. Like the Celtics don't have that guy who can be a centerpiece because he's young and up and coming, but not there yet. They only have Jaylen Brown. So you don't trade an already established all-star caliber star who has still room for growth and the picks. It's either or. The Celtics just don't have the or. That's their problem. You do picks and a player like Hero. You don't give them all the picks and Brown and another good player. It's an insane ask. I don't care how good Durant is because you're handicapping your future if it goes bad for whatever reason, and you're giving up too much out of your core where you're not even sure if you're going to be better tomorrow. It's an insane ask. 2 starters and 5 firsts. I want nothing to do with that.